And they removed every single gun. I mean, it was, it was really, in the grand scheme of things, like, it's not nothing you can't find at my house. It was like 15, 16 guns and several thousand rounds of ammunition. Like, but the
A
prosecutor,
Wednesday.
right, exactly. It's like, okay.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're going to be talking about whether being a prepper can be held against you in court. How and do we have some tools that you could use if you're interacting with law enforcement? What kind of stuff do we see shake it out in court? And finally, where do we draw the line? Or, is there a tool you can use to decide, hey, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea? We think we have answers to all that. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And we're in censorship season. Make sure you check out, we publish videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Central here in the U.S. Now, YouTube won't always notify you because there's some things going on, but make sure to check your subscription status because they also seem to be messing with that. But, Emily Taylor, how big of a prepper are you?
I'm no Richard Hayes, I'll say that.
What?
So this has come to our attention for a number of different reasons. We've had a recent client matter that involves this issue, and also we just got hit by a big ass hurricane here in Houston.
Yeah.
Even though it really wasn't, it was only a Cat 1, but it had big ass implications, I suppose. So we are
You got a potty mouth.
we're in the I know. You should hear. Ooh, ooh. My 2-year-old recently dropped an S bomb, and I was like, "Where'd you learn that?" Like,
Yeah.
burp.
Where'd you learn that?
But so anyway, I am no Richard Hayes. Richard Hayes is a hardcore prepper.
I don't know that. Is keeping 6 months of food, water, and gasoline being a prepper? Maybe.
Yeah, I got like a week's worth of supplies. Like I got like hurricane supplies. And I mean, you get your MREs, you get your medicines, you get everything stocked up,
I will.
water. But
I will
I should
say.
be now. I need to be. I'm convinced now that I need to be ready to go off the
I
grid.
will say, like the one thing that I learned from Hurricane Beryl that I think everyone in the United States should do is get an RV hookup to your house. That's not something I didn't know that I needed before, but now I'm looking at a house and being like, oh, you know what? This checks all the boxes. Do you have an RV hookup to so I can plug in a generator into my house? Nope. Pass.
I learned that Beryl is a name, and that 2-year-olds love Doritos.
Yeah,
It
but
was no power. Ooh boy, she had a Doritos and sandwich lunch, and she was out of control.
for real, get the RV hookup. It's like $300. Switch the power off, switch it over, boom, generator, whole house. Save all your food, save your air conditioning, because it was hot too.
It was hot. Okay, so prepping your stockpiles of firearms and ammunition. This comes up a lot because I don't know. I guess it's easier than you would imagine to stockpile. All of a sudden, you look around and you're like,
Well, first you're just a savvy consumer until one day, bing, bang, boom, you gotta have a whole storage unit full of this stuff.
well, yeah. And then people tell you, people like me say, don't sell your guns anymore. Don't sell those guns.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, they're just adding up, and the ammunition's adding up, and you're like, all right, here
Yeah.
we are. I guess I'm a stockpiler.
But I mean, it's a good idea to be prepared. You live in Tornado Alley, you live where hurricanes are, you got earthquakes. Prepare for the disaster you anticipate, zombie apocalypse, whatever it is,
Hmm.
whatever's most likely to happen. But, we see this come up in court with real clients if they are one of these collectors of emergency supplies. And there are some things that you can do to kind of minimize your exposure and maximize. I mean, because the whole idea behind prepping is that you're prepared for, an emergency, right? You would hate that preparation to actually sink you in a courtroom after an emergency.
Correct. But prosecutors, they love this sort of thing. They love something that is otherwise legal, can be pretty innocuous, and they love to take it and twist it as something to use against you. Why? Well, there are lots of rules surrounding, like, if you've really done something bad, there are a lot more safeguards in check to that bad thing in your past coming into your trial.
Yeah, because we don't want people to judge you for what you've done in the past. We want them to look at the thing in front of them and say, did you do this thing or did you not do this thing?
Correct. Lots of safeguards. However, if the thing you're doing is like, maybe, I mean, I'm not saying prepping is weird, except the way Richard does it a little bit.
What are you talking?
But like, if the thing is like not objectively bad, but is something that could be used to make you look like a weirdo, that's like the prosecutors just eat that for breakfast. They love it because it's a lot easier to get it in into your trial, and then they want to make you look like a crazy person.
Yeah, and I say let's start with taking a step back and start with the investigation stage with police officers,
Sure.
and then we'll get into the courtroom. But for the most part, police, law enforcement, people investigating a crime scene. Let's say it's at your house. You have supplies at your house. The way you minimize your exposure here, not consenting to searches and not talking about the stuff.
Don't
I mean,
talk about it.
the police investigators, they are probably not going to know this stuff unless you voluntarily share it with them. And so, not speaking to them without an attorney, I can't imagine an attorney is going to advise you to turn over this type of information or disclose this information. Not searching, consenting any searches. Maybe your defensive incident took place in your front doorway. Well, let's say you're keeping supplies in your attic. Well, if the police, you gave them consent to search your whole house, well, guess what? They're going to go crawling in places where there's no crime scene there, and they're just going to gather negative material against you. I had a client who he had an incident in his house. They wanted a consent to search. He had an extensive gun collection. We declined a search. But when they went to the judge to get a search warrant, the judge, I could see, actually limited the scope of their search to the area of where the incident took place. They wanted to search the whole house, and the judge said, well, guess what? There's not relevant evidence in other parts of the house. You're limited to this search. So, I mean, there's some procedural safeguards should they go, that extra step and get the warrant.
See, I had
Exact opposite
yeah, I had
experience.
a negative outcome in that. They went for the warrant. They wanted the whole house, and they got it.
Yeah.
And they removed every single gun. I mean, it was, it was really, in the grand scheme of things, like, it's not nothing you can't find at my house. It was like 15, 16 guns and several thousand rounds of ammunition. Like, but the
A
prosecutor,
Wednesday.
right, exactly. It's like, pff, okay, talk to me when it's 1,500 guns.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
I bet one of y'all got that. Don't comment. Keep it private. But
Yeah,
I bet some of our viewers
somebody
have
out
that.
there. But like the prosecutor was just clutching her pearls over it. Her pearls.
Yeah, and so, all right, so we've guarded ourselves against the police. We're getting into the courtroom now. And this is where Emily's talking about this, prejudicial information, how we try the general rule, we keep that information out unless there's like a really good reason why we need to do it. Let's say someone's saying, that's not me, and then they can prove up the identity of the person. There's some
Yeah.
exceptions to this rule. But in your case, the prosecutor was kind of playing both sides.
She was playing both sides. Q Mac.
Yeah.
But it luckily we had a great judge who ended up keeping all of the guns, all of the ammunition out. But I will say oh God, prosecutors are so sneaky because they were like marching them in and out of the courtroom into where they were holding all the evidence back every single day in front, like hoping jurors would see them in the hallway and going into the jury room with like all these like lines and lines
That's so
and lines of
chicken
ARs
shit.
and stuff. It was so chicken shit. But anyway, but luckily we had a really good judge, but it put us in this very sort of tension-filled argument over it because, I was like, look, she wants to introduce these things because she wants to use it against him. And she's like, well, it's his Second Amendment right. So there's nothing wrong with this. It's not a bad act, Judge. It's not prejudicial. It's the Second Amendment. It's not prejudicial, is it? And then I, the gun person, I'm like, well, you obviously think it's prejudicial, which is why you want to parade them all in here. So yeah, so in that case, it is prejudicial. You got to keep it out. And so I was like almost arguing against guns, I guess,
For the client.
for the client.
Yeah.
And luckily it worked. But I mean, it is because there is nothing illegal about stockpiling guns and ammunition. It is not a traditional bad act such that those procedural safeguards get put into place in your trial. Any judge could make any decision on that, and I guarantee you it would not be reversible error. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and that's the tough part is, and we hear this, hey, any good lawyer would get this stuff thrown out. Guess what? Judges, it's a roulette wheel of what kind of decision you're going to get. They're given broad discretion, and, if it's not an abuse of that discretion, the courts aren't going to do anything about it. And even, let's say, they say, you know what, you abused your discretion by letting this information in, but it wouldn't have changed the outcome. They have so many different outs here that, judges really feel insulated from all this stuff. The entire system is designed to preserve convictions. And
Yes.
so there's not a lot of security there. there's nothing that a great lawyer can do to make a bad judge follow the law. I mean,
That,
you can't do anything.
no, donate more money to their campaign.
There you go.
That's what.
Then do you become part of the problem?
Then you're part of the problem.
But I think we have a practical tool for, hey, where do I draw the line? Or how do I make a decision about whether I should, engage in, emergency stockpiling? I think there's a ton of benefits to it. And I think it's all about a calculated risk decision. Hey, would you feel comfortable all this being paraded in front of a jury? What if I got a bad judge? Would this, just put on display before them? And if the answer is, man, I would not lose a wink of sleep over that, then I think then it's probably okay.
Yeah. What are you more scared of? Zombies or the government?
Wow. I actually don't know the answer.
Yeah, I don't know the answer either. Both. But yeah, so I mean, practically do your risk benefit. I think that's going to land everyone differently. Also, practically, I mean, we talked about not giving consent to search, not talking about, and again, whether it's firearms, ammunition, whether it's just your food, water, gas, I mean, anything that you're worried could be twisted against you in a courtroom, which frankly, prosecutors will do that with virtually anything anyway. But maybe find an alternate place to store it. They can't find something with a search warrant for your home if it's not in your home.
Right. Yeah, and off premises storage, no, but I mean, most of your defensive situations are probably not going to be happening at a, third party storage unit. And so what you keep in there probably going to remain private. But I think that's a really practical solution.
It is.
But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video. Catch us on our next episode at Monday, 5 p.m. Central.
And until then, we're the Armed Attorneys.
Speaking of prepping, Emily, you got some golf balls. Thank you to whoever did that.
This actually made me go back in time for Richard asking people to send me golf balls. This actually made me laugh.
It says
out loud really hard.
It says armed and deadly, and it has 2 firearms on it.
Love it. Not even for me, and I love it.